Your campaign slogan is "Good parents will be turned into criminals." Tell us a bit more about what you mean by that.
So what we mean is that the removal of the reasonable chastisement defence from law is going to result in parents who use very mild physical discipline, so a tap on the hand or a smack in the back of the legs, being investigated by the police, being cautioned, maybe being sent to an out-of-court disposal class, or ultimately prosecuted. And the Welsh Government is clear about that. It says that there could be up to 40 prosecutions in the first 5 years, and that 500 parents a year will be investigated under the smacking law. So I guess our main point is that parents who do use very mild, very reasonable chastisement shouldn't be subjected to police investigations and potentially prosecution. We think that's very over the top. It's quite draconian. And parents should be trusted to bring up their children in the way that they choose within the reasonable bounds of the law. And where they do nothing to harm their children, they should be left alone to parent.
Do you think it's maybe that this kind of law is in place for people who are using smacking as an excuse for something that is beyond a slight tap? Actually, it's to protect children who are victim to something that isn't what most parents would call smacking. Do you take that point?
No, I mean we've heard that point before, and it's not true. The reasonable chastisement defence in practice is hardly ever used. I don't think it's been cited in Wales for the past 10 years. It's merely there as a guide for prosecutors and the police on what is deemed reasonable and what is not. And, the police and the courts know when parenting actions are reasonable and moderate and when they cross the line into abuse. And no police officer or court official is ever going to want a parent who does commit abuse to be let off the hook. So that point doesn't stand. The reasonable chastisement defence is useful just as a guide for prosecutors and a final defence for parents, because you can imagine the scenario where a parent might be accused of actions which are wrong when they haven't done anything wrong. Under the smacking ban, a parent who taps their child in the hand as discipline, and the kid goes into school the next day and says to the teacher that "Mummy hit me," that word "hit" could mean many things, and there might be a concurrent investigation into what happened. And just now, the police would be able to say it was only a tap on the hand, no further action is necessary. But after the change in the law in Wales in 2022, when the smacking ban comes in, that tap on the hand will be considered physical punishment and will be investigated and followed up by the police and will result in some kind of punishment for the parent. So, the whole point of our Be Reasonable campaign is that is highly unreasonable. I think the vast majority of adults in Wales do not want to see ordinary loving mums and dads who tap their kid in the hand as a method of discipline to be prosecuted, to be investigated by the police, and to have that investigation in family life. And, it's also going to be a bit of a waste of time for the police and for social services departments, which are already completely overworked and stretched and struggling to identify cases of real abuse. So causing the police and social workers to chase around after perfectly good, loving mums and dads is not going to do them any favours either.
And why do you feel so strongly about this, Jamie? Because I know a lot of people listening will completely share your point of view but won't necessarily campaign about it. Why is it so important to you?
I think it's just the fact that there's it's going to affect potentially so many parents in Scotland and Wales, and it's fine for people to campaign against smacking. It's fine for the government to discourage parents from using smacking if they want, but they're making a very specific change to the criminal law. And as a campaign, we think it's important to stand up for parents, good, loving, decent parents who are going to be at the rough end of this law. And it's all very well for politicians to virtue signal and to pass this law, and say that it's going to protect children. But when it's not going to protect children, when it's going to bring families that are good and loving into contact with the authorities and result in very disproportionate intervention, potentially for years to come, and affecting hundreds, if not thousands, of parents in the coming years, it's important to stand up and to say that it's not right. And we hoped that the Welsh Government would listen to that. Sadly, it seems that the law is going through now, and that the harmful effects of a smacking ban may be realised only in hindsight. We hoped that the government would listen, and it's sad that they don't. But we're going to continue campaigning against this. We'd encourage people to visit our campaign website, and we're going to keep monitoring the effects of the law. And sadly, we think it's going to result in the kind of negative things I've been talking about. So if parents do want to contact us, they can certainly do that.
And how do I can tell that your strongest point is that parents should be able to have this choice and be protected. But do you feel personally that smacking can be an effective method of getting your point across of a punishment?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't have children myself yet. I know that I was smacked at myself as a child, and I know from anecdotal evidence that some parents think that at certain times it can be useful, especially with younger children. The example that's often given by parents we speak to is if a child's doing something that's going to put them in danger, like about to run out the roads or reach out for a hot thing, and the parent has to grab them back and tap them on the hand and say firmly no. That in that dangerous situation is often the most effective and quick method of communicating the danger to the child and stopping that behaviour which would result in them being harmed. For parents that want to do that, when there's no evidence, from science to show that very mild discipline is harmful to the child, and the Welsh Government itself admits that, that's something that shouldn't be criminal. I think we can all think of scenarios from our own childhood and perhaps with our own children where these things might happen. And it's going too far to say that parents should be investigated for these mild, reasonable actions.